I wanted to introduce Brendan, since you're the closest one, and, and also, probably have the longest relationship with some of the work that we've been doing. Actually, Jan, you as well. To kind of talk about.
We're tied.
Yeah, you tied, guys. Talk about some of the local projects, what you're working on, and kind of how Microsoft and open source plug in together in your work.
Cool.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to thank Microsoft for having me come out here tonight. There's some great people. I'm the ex-organizer and founder of PHP Toronto and WordCamp Toronto. Currently now one of the organizers of WordCamp Montreal. Very happy to be back in Montreal. I'm originally from here, just moved back. First met these guys back last summer. They contacted me out of the blue to help sponsor WordCamp Toronto, which was great. I got an email from Microsoft saying we'd like to get involved. We now have Microsoft Open Source. It was the email that I had, and I was there with my team, and I said, this has to be a joke. Open source Microsoft doesn't make any sense. It's an oxymoron. Can't be possible. They actually want to give us money for a WordCamp. I'll take their money, but let's see where this goes. But it turned out they were really great guys. There were a lot of really neat things that I learned that I had no clue Windows was involved in. I knew some of the individuals at the time, David Crow, Joey DeVille, who are longtime social and blogging personalities or famous individuals online that I already knew from stuff they had done. So I thought it was very cool to get involved, and I met a lot of really interesting people. So yeah, that's my little plug for Microsoft. They're actually doing open source. There really is an open source Microsoft. So being a PHP guy and a WordPress guy, I have had the opportunity to really start playing around with some of these different tools and seeing what they can do. I'm a WordPress developer, freelancer. I'm also an evangelist for WordPress, so I do a lot of, I speak for WordPress at a lot of different events, as well as help run the various different WordCamps. And recently I've been doing a lot of interesting things, trying to play around with all the new tools that are available for WordPress on Windows and PHP on Windows, specifically the web platform installer, which I think is really neat because originally, I'm an open source guy and I've always propagated open source, and you would assume that I probably use a Mac or I'm running Linux, which is true. I had Linux running for a long time, but unfortunately I couldn't get a lot of my other software to run in there like Adobe and other things, so I always had to have Windows. So it's one of these, while I'm open source, but I have to use Windows, so I'm going to complain about Windows all the time and how much I hate it because it doesn't do anything I want it to do, right? I'm just being honest, right? So it was very difficult sometimes, I got to set up WAMP and I got to do this and then I got to install this and I got to install that. I could never really get WordPress to run properly on IIS, so I always had to end up going with WAMP and all these other different things. So it was a difficult procedure to get it up and running. And when I found out about this thing, I believe it was Paul Labarge, who first told me about the web platform installer, now that Microsoft, I don't know if he's an evangelist, I guess he's yeah. So I checked it out, and it's a neat little tool. So I had the ability to literally click it, install it, gave me everything I needed, including WordPress, Drupal, a bunch of other really cool things. So currently here in Montreal, I've had the opportunity, I'm not really freelance anymore, I'm working for a big firm here in Montreal called Optimal Payments, where we're a merchant gateway. So we're responsible for a lot of really large development and big software that's all proprietary for some customers where you process all kinds of different transactions. And recently we've been trying to play around with open source. This is a firm that uses specifically Java, Solaris, things like that. So it's really interesting to say, hey, I'm an open source guy, you've hired me, I think we should go with WordPress. This is what I'm comfortable with, this is something that can be very powerful, these are some neat things that we can do. So getting these guys to understand how to do it was very interesting. Sitting down with Solaris guys and then saying, well, we can just recompile PHP on Solaris. We can try that, which was a lot of fun for anyone here who's familiar with any of that. That was kind of grueling. So now, so it was a matter of how do we figure this out. And we had some large meetings with a lot of people, and I mentioned, well, there's PHP on Windows now. We can run WordPress on Windows. There's a lot of different things that we can do. So, recently I've had the opportunity to play around with a lot of really cool things and figure out different ways to kind of combine open source with the commercial world, which is something I've always I've always propagated, is that I think open source and the commercial community should be more in touch with each other. It is about community, and let's face it, a lot of people in the open source community use open source tools for what reason? To sell it. They're using it with their clients, they're using it with their customers, they're using it for themselves, but in the end there's a motivation to develop a community around that, to create a product around that, and to have people, you know, use this product, which is really no different than what any commercial organization does, right? Just differing philosophies on how they do it. So I've always propagated getting more open source in the commercial workspace and people understand how these can work together. So I find it really interesting to see that Microsoft is, and I'm going to say it, finally on board. Like, holy cow, it's taken them a long time to realize that open source is important. It's a very large community. It's growing all the time. And there is a way for us to, you know, kind of unite these two worlds and figure out situations and scenarios where this can happen. So that's my story, really, being a big WordPress guy and being a big open source guy, running a bunch of open source communities like FUG, which was nicely put up there, phug.ca, which is a large open source community I run, as well as my blog, which is very cool, so check me out. dropthedigibomb.com. I'm also known as Digibomb, so you can find me at Digibomb. You can also find me at Optimal Payments if you want to learn more about what our company's doing with open source tools. And I'll also be speaking at Confu. I've had the opportunity to really work with some Quebec guys now, PHP Quebec, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So come check out Confu as well and see my presentation on WordPress development. And I'll be around for the rest of the evening if you have any other questions. I'm not sure what else.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.